These are offered by the Georgia Tech Office of Tech Licensing. And we usually have one representative from OTL who comes to the IBB atrium. And please feel free at any time to drop by between 11 and 1 p.m. The next one is actually today, but this is a monthly event. So please be aware of this. It's a great way to just talk about, intellectual property and how to protect your technology. Okay. Also wanted to make you aware of this event through CreateX. This is a webinar on how to start a company and through Unshackled. This is Wednesday, September 11th from 5 to 6:30, and the QR code is here if you're interested in registering for this. And our next BioLaunchPad seminar will be on September 26th, and it's going to be by Samir Patel from Moonlight Therapeutics, and he's going to be talking about human capital, the importance of people to the success and failure of a startup. And we have one more announcement before we get started, and I'm going to turn it over to Daniel Aziz from Nucleate Bio, who has a few words to say.
Thanks, Cynthia. I'm here from Nucleate Atlanta. We're a life sciences startup activator program. We're going to match inventors with both business contributors and mentors and experts in the domain of entrepreneurship. If that sounds interesting to you, I'll post an image in the chat, and we have our upcoming event on September 18th if you want to come out and get some food and chat with people in the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Daniel. So a little bit about what we're going to do today. This is going to be kind of an informal conversation with Jim West from BioTools Innovator and Mason Chilmonczyk, who is a Georgia Tech alum and the CEO of Georgia Tech spinout company, Andson Biotech. So BioTools Innovator is a very unique accelerator because it focuses on life science research tools and diagnostic companies. And so it's a really good fit for things that we do at Georgia Tech. Mason, again, CEO of Andson Biotech, his company went through this accelerator program. So what I wanted to do today was just have an informal conversation between Jim and Mason, talk a little bit about BioTools, the BioTools Innovator program, and also get Mason to also discuss what it was like to go through the program. But before we start, I'd like to start with Jim and Mason giving sort of an introduction, a little bio sketch about themselves. So I'm going to turn it over first to Jim. Jim, thank you so much for being here today.
Great. Well, great to see you all. Mason, is always good to see you. I'm excited to get to talk to you guys today about BioTools Innovator. It's a really special program, and it's near and dear to my heart because while I'm the director here at BioTools Innovator, I'm also a founder myself. I had a biotech company. It was a life science tool company. We licensed some technology from the University of Kansas. And a few years in, I got my company into the first year of what was BioTools Innovator back in 2021. But my background really goes back to I'm a medical device guy. My undergrad's in mechanical engineering. I got a master's in biomedical product development. Did some orthopedic research in grad school, and then I went into kind of product development. And my vision and passion was to help bring new medical products and innovations to people, and that was what I wanted to do. And I spent about 12 to 13 years in the medical device field. I worked in a variety of companies, startups, worked in prototyping, product development, commercialization. I did some quality consulting, regulatory work. And through all that process, I ended up getting one of the first mobile medical devices cleared by the FDA using an iPhone as a stethoscope back in 2016. And as I was kind of going along that journey, I met a professor at the University of Kansas who said, "Hey, I've got this really interesting life science technology, but I need some business people to help me build it into a company." And so I was the one crazy enough to say yes. And we jumped in, and I spent about 5 years building that. We were able to exit that last summer, and then I've came on here as the director of BioTools in October of last year. So it's almost coming up on a year for me. but I love helping companies. I love startups. I love technologies that have a chance to change the world, and I look forward to talking about what we're doing here.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Mason, you want to introduce yourself? A lot of us know you, but love to hear your story, which I think is a really interesting one, very relevant to what we do here.
Yeah, of course. Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
Um,
you're very clear. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, so thanks for having me here. And Jim, again, good to see you. I feel actually sad that I'm not seeing any of you in person. I feel like I keep missing everybody for conference travel. So today I meant to be there in person with y'all at Georgia Tech, but I'm uh, actually getting off this call and getting on a plane. So, anyways, a little background on, I guess, Andson Biotech. For those of you that don't know, we're a company out of Georgia Tech based on PhD research done in Andrei Fedorov's lab. So during my PhD, myself, Austin Culberson, who's now a principal engineer at Andson, and Andrei, we invented this technology that accelerates sample prep for mass spec. And I had absolutely no intention of starting a company, of course, at that time. But Andrei, he was really, oh, and still remains to be good about protecting inventions, having invention disclosures, et cetera. So kind of like Jim, the core IP at Andson was essentially just licensed from a university. It just so happens to be that I also was involved with the invention of that, which I don't know if that sounds cool. It actually just made it more difficult to like license it, right? Because you had to like play these interesting games with the OTT to make sure you didn't have the conflict. So, anyways, the core technology developed in the PhD. I towards the end of my PhD was considering consulting. Honestly, that was like the main thing I was considering. And then some things happened to me personally in my life, like happened to everybody, where you really have those moments, whether it's loss or gain or whatever it is, that make you reevaluate things. And for me, that happened late in my PhD. And I really thought, man, I don't know what I want to do, but I really want to try and like discover drugs that help people not die from cancer. That was like as naive as it was. And I happened to have this technology that was in the cell and gene therapy space and had a potential to help people discover drugs that might help people not die from cancer. So that was really just my naive goal is, okay, I guess I'll start a company on this. And I was really not great at raising money for years. So like, I mean, it was like from I think 2019 to 2020, we've just tried pitching to get non-dilutive funding, and we finally got non-dilutive funding from at least Christina Wessels probably remembers the Biolocity or Culture Translational Fund in the Georgia Research Alliance. I did that simultaneously when I finished my PhD, went on from there, tried to commercialize the technology further. Obviously, COVID was happening, so it was challenging. We got quite a bit of progress before failing to raise. I mean, I don't know how many times we pitched so many times, and then on a like kind of last ditch effort, I applied to Ycombinator, which is an accelerator in San Francisco in 2021. I got into the January 2022 batch with Andson, and that was really the inception of Andson. So we used that small check to spin out the company. I raised about $1 million total in 2022. We had additional support from the Georgia Research Alliance that allowed me to stand up a lab, hire Austin Culberson full time, and then in 2023, we get into the BioTools Innovator, right? And so we go through that. We start developing a bunch of, actually, I think the mentorship through there helped us meet some of the investors that ultimately helped us close our rounds and some of the exposure and visibility we got. So the BioTools Innovator was kind of the beginning of Andson closing our seed round in March. So we started the program, started lining up all our investors, made a bunch of progress. And then actually it was like BioTools Innovator, we were a finalist. We lost by like one vote or whatever. You know, I'm not mad about it still or anything. And then from there, we ended up closing the rounds just a couple months later. So that's kind of a story to date. But I do want to, I guess, highlight, you know, I went through the woes of academic translation. And that was the main thing that I have a lot of experience with that would be relevant to the Georgia Tech crowd is how to navigate a lot of that. I think Jim has a lot more perspective on how different types of companies can navigate the broader ecosystem, but the challenges of getting a technology out of academia are usually pretty similar. So anyways.
Thanks, Mason. Jim, why don't you, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about the BioTools Innovator program and how it's unique and what your value proposition is to the companies that apply to your program.
Yeah. BioTools Innovator. So I think there's a couple things I want to talk about. I think, you know, what Mason kind of touched on. when you're spinning technology, which honestly, a lot of our companies and technologies are spun out of academia in some form, not all, but definitely most. And it's very common for the postdocs, the PhDs, the people working on these projects, taking them through and interested in developing a commercial pipeline. And surprisingly, a lot of them suffer from the same challenges. If you spent your life in academia and you've never raised money before, it's a very different beast. Um, and if you're going to be a leader in a company, principally speaking, people will sit and argue, well, what's the most important thing? Is it the product? Is it the customer? Is it the problem? Is it the technology? And if you're going to be the leader in the company, really the only thing that matters is can you raise money? Nobody likes to hear that, but at the end of the day, you have to have money to build a company. And so Mason's done a great job. And part of our job is to help try to fill some of that gap because as you're transitioning, you have a whole lot to learn. You've learned one world, but there's a whole another world to learn, and that's the world of business. And so at BioTools Innovator, we're not really positioned to help you solve technical problems. If you're like, my reagent's not working, my microscope's broken, our data is not matching something, we can't really help you with that. That's your expertise. But if you're like, I've got a product and I can't figure out how to get it to the customer, or I'm trying to figure out how to build a product that an investor will put money into, or develop a business model that someone that will turn into a multi-million-dollar business that could eventually be sold, things like that. Those are areas where we can help because we have an ecosystem of experts, people who have been there at big companies, they've built and run product lines, people who have raised money, started companies, sold companies, people who have built sales teams, people who have done all these things. And there's a lot of nuance in each market, but the fundamentals of business are fairly standard. And so it's really it's skills you can learn. And the most honestly, like often the most successful CEO is a repeat CEO. Those are the types of markers. So our goal is to help you get there. And how do we do that? So BioTools Innovator is an ecosystem. It's an accelerator for life science companies, and that includes a broad range of companies. What we don't do is we're not a biotech accelerator, and that's part of what makes us so special, because biotech gets all the all the name recognition, all the glory. They're curing the diseases. They're taking the big risks and swings. Here we go, and they're really important. But we're actually supporting the ecosystem that's around biotech. And it includes diagnostic companies as well as any sort of tool and platform on top of it. Let's see. Okay. So what I want to talk to you about is kind of who we are, what you should know about us, what type of companies are a fit, and kind of the benefits of the program. And then I'll tell you a little
Jim,
bit
before you get started, can I just interrupt for a moment? I forgot to tell everybody that if you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and there's going to be plenty of time for Q&A. So just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. Okay, thanks. Sorry, Jim.
No worries. I'm not a rambler, so we'll keep it short and sweet here. So this is our team. So we got 4 people running this. We're part of a broader organization, though. We got about 20 people on staff. But there's about 4 of us focused on the BioTools Innovator. And so it's our team that makes this happen. And, if you get in, you'll get to know everybody really well. And everybody's got great expertise in the field. But we represent 3 accelerators. So we have BioTools Innovator, which I'm the director of. But we also have MedTech Innovator, which is focused on medical devices, and MedTech Innovator Asia Pacific, focused on the Asia Pacific market with medical devices. So we actually are able to support a broad range of companies, but we do keep our focuses fairly narrow, which allows us to provide more expertise. And at BioTools Innovator, why should you apply? Well, these things that you probably don't know, that you need to know and need to learn how to know, we help you through curriculum. We have educational curriculum. We do weekly webinars led by panels of experts in the field on a weekly basis through the accelerator. We have a community of alum and experts and investors and strategics who are friendly and willing to help and talk to you and work with you on your problems. Every company gets assigned expert mentors to help focus on their specific needs and problems. And I believe that, you get credibility by being selected in the program. It's a tough thing to get into, and it does let you stand out. And resources and funding. We have a lot of investors in our community, and we also give away $300,000 each year in total cash prizes to our cohorts. And just to give you some context for the program, over the 10 years MedTech Innovator has been in business, we've served over 600 companies that have gone through the accelerator. 95% are still in business or been acquired. I mean, that right there is incredible. No other accelerator, I think, on the planet has that number. And our companies have raised more than $8 billion of total capital after the program. And last year ended up 30% of the entire medtech market went to one of our portfolio companies. But BioTools Innovator, we've been around for 4 years. We have helped 63 companies with our current cohort, and we've given away more than $1.14 million in cash prizes. We'll be giving away another $300,000 in 2 weeks at our capstone event. And our companies in honestly, like, pretty tough markets over the life of the program, really, $166 million in follow-on funding. Our average round sizes for companies are about $9 million. So a lot of great successes there. And reasons to join, we've got our sort of sponsors here. So we're on the upper right here, and you can see Thermo Fisher, Nissan, Jabil, and then we also have Broad Oak and RCT. And actually, Jabil's that's an outlier. We had them. They're no longer here, but we got some new ones we need to update with. So old slides. Sorry about that. Again, when I came on last year, I talked to Mason and others, and I said, what's the most valuable part of this program to you? Is it the money? Is it the education? What is it? And everybody said almost the same thing, and it's the network. It's the ecosystem. It's being surrounded by people who understand what you're doing. I've had people tell me, speaking on stage, presenting my company was the first time not only did all the people around me on stage understand what I was doing, but everybody in the audience did too. And I think that's the power of this ecosystem, is we're a community of people who get it. Doesn't cost anything. We do have some time and travel. We have two events, an opening and a closing, that are in person, but the rest of it's virtual. It's a virtual accelerator, so it just costs your time and energy. Who can get in? So this is a broad breakdown, but if you're a research product, an instrument, if your customer is a lab or a research organization, those are good fits for us. Diagnostics, if it's a molecular diagnostic, a new type of assay, some biomarker discovery type stuff, those are good fits for us. If it's an R&D manufacturing service, if you've got cell incubators, if you've got purifiers, any sort of technology that affects bioprocessing, biomanufacturing, good fit. And then a lot of drug discovery technologies. These are not meant to be an all-inclusive category. It's just a sample of the types of companies. But like I said, the real identifiers that we don't really support true drug companies. They need to have a product platform in some way. So our companies, it's kind of a complicated slide, but I'm going to go to this one instead, because what you see here on the x-axis is equity funding to date at the start of the program, and the y-axis is the stage of the company. And so a lot of you guys, you're probably going to be at the bottom, at the concept prototype stage, and you'll be working your way up. And that's okay. We support that. If you're a little bit farther along, if you're kind of in the Series A stage, if we're finding customers, we're scaling our sales and marketing, we got our product figured out, that's okay too. We can help you as well. The biggest cutoff right now is we have about $10 million in total capital raised as a cutoff. That doesn't include grant funding. It only includes dilutive equity funding. Can anybody find Andson on here? Anybody? I wish I could see the audience. I'll assume you're pointing or not, but there's Andson right in the middle. We won't ask where Mason is today, but I'm assuming he's moved from this position since he started the program back in the day. But these are the companies. So how do you get in? We have an application process. It starts in November this year, actually. And last year we had 300 qualified applications. Those applications were reviewed by our expert ecosystem. And of those, we invited 20% to an in-person pitch event at a location. Last year it was Boston, San Diego, and a virtual event. This year we're going to be going to Boston, San Diego, again, a virtual event, but we're also going to be looking to expand to a European spot. From those events, we pick 15 to 20 companies. That's going to grow this next year. We're going to grow bigger this next year, but we're going to invite these companies to the Accelerator, which runs June to October. And through the cohort, we select top 4 or 5 companies to get the opportunity to pitch for our cash prizes at the Capstone event. This year, it's happening in Boston in 2 weeks as part of Bioprocessing International. So if you happen to have be in Boston or want to travel, we still have some tickets available. Let me know. So I'm going to probably stop here. There's more we could talk about, but that's kind of an intro to the program and why I think some of the value that we can provide.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Mason, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience going through BioTools and what the most important value is that you got out of it?
Yeah, of course. So I think to just like tell you up front, I think the most important thing that Jim says, and everybody tells you this, and you're probably not understanding it fully, but it's all connections. Like everything is just connections and who you know. And so even when it was admitted to BioTools Innovator, I actually ended up knowing some of the people in BioTools, but there was so many other people in the ecosystem that made it possible. But to go through the process, I am an interesting, I think, case study for BioTools because I also went through Ycombinator, which I know there's like actually a couple, like Indie Labs is another example of a company that also went through Ycombinator, where we have an example of like kind of I guess you would say a flagship accelerator, Ycombinator, and then what BioTools Innovator is, which is like a fundamentally different approach, right? So I think the difference is that you're meeting people that are like directly relevant to BioTools, which maybe not even everybody in the audience right now that's going to be relevant for, but for somebody like me that usually I had to start every conversation with like, do you know what mass spectrometry is? And they're like, okay, no. I'm like, okay, well, let's take a step back. Do you know what a biopharmaceutical is? And maybe it wouldn't be the case. Everybody in the BioTools Innovator program was telling me about what my company should be doing before I even explained what we did, because they understand what mass spectrometry is. They understand some of the problems are. They understand the challenges with developing drugs. So there's just like, you walk into, the pitch event, the one where you're first invited to, and you go through this roundtable thing where you pitch, I think, I don't know, 4 times in a row, 10 minutes, you questions for 10 minutes or whatever. And in those maybe hour, I met maybe 30 stakeholders. Every single one of them was somebody I'm still talking to this day about, whatever it is in the BioTools, if it's an investor, and some of those folks even ended up getting in on my last round. So I cannot overemphasize the ecosystem, all the people, the actual people that you will meet are going to be helpful for your company, period. And so that alone makes it worth applying. It makes it worth getting in there. And a second note, I failed to get in the first year. So they said I was not a fit the first year. And then eventually I did get into BioTools Innovator and still found it was worth it. And it really did help me. So I think at the beginning of BioTools, we were kind of trying to figure out how to put together a round. Was it going to be from a VC? Was it going to be from angels? Was it going to be a blend of both? How much do we raise? Who do we raise it from? And then, of course, there's always the questions like valuation. And Jim alluded to it. Then, assuming you raise the round, how do you recruit? How do you hire? What should the terms be of all these things? So there's like all these questions you have that I came into BioTools with, and I really got a ton of help on all of those things. So I was paired with 2 mentors, and I don't know, Jim, I'm sure we'll talk about the mentor process, but I had 2 different mentors, and those mentors had different perspectives. One was a BioTools founder who exited and started a VC fund, so he had a very unique perspective on that journey. And then the other is more marketing. And so I worked with those mentors throughout the entire program, met their friends' friends, and tried to leverage that network as much as I could. In addition to when I went to these events, I would try and go get dinner with RCT and all the other folks that might be at the event to try and network with them further. So the whole BioTools system works because there's so many people that want to help you. And I guess that's what I want to get across is we had dynamic help from these different people that really helped put our story together, and then ultimately led to closing our seed round. So I can't emphasize enough. It was great. And we again had all of this fancy Silicon Valley coaching, And I'm not disparaging that and just saying it's so different to raise BioTools money than it is to raise SaaS money. It's just a different process. And so you need to have different coaching.
Yeah, when I was running my company, I spent about a year and a half thinking I was a biotech company. And so I went to Boston. I did Mass Challenge Boston myself. I talked to a bunch of biotech investors, and um, I was told over and over, blew my mind. They were like, Jim, I like you. Your technology sounds cool, but you don't have any value. I want I want a company that's got one shot at plate, and you're going to give me 1,000x on my money, or you're going to give me nothing. And I wanted in a year um, to kind of know that. And they're like, you've got way too many ways to win. You're never going to get 1,000x. You're going to get 10, 20x maybe. And I'm out. And I'm like, this sounds great. Like, who doesn't like this math? But the biotech investors don't and didn't. And it took me a while to figure out who the biotool investors were. And I spent about a year and a half networking that, figuring it out, drawing up my own map, connecting with these people. And then when I came to BioTools Innovator and I saw our list of investors who participate in the program, I'm like, that's 70% of my list right there, all here in one place. Um, and so that community, especially if you've never built a company before, the ability to sort of network to the right people, find those, and it's investing is a tough game because investors only invest in about less than 1% of the companies they see in a year. Um, and so if you're going to a software as a service VC that you get connected to, you have a friend who works there, whatever, and they're like, yeah, but I understand your market. You're out. I mean, you're already out. They don't understand your market. They don't understand who the competition is. They don't understand the value of what you're bringing. They don't know how to analyze it, and they're not going to invest. And so you've got to get comfort with the investors. And that's another great thing about our community is it's these people who really get and understand what you're doing before you even open your mouth. There was another company that applied this last year. They didn't get in, but I was talking to them and they're like, we're raising our Series A round next year, about $7 million. It took so much work to put our $2 million seed round together. And we're just kind of, we're hoping we can help refine our message to investors. And that's really what we think would get to the program. And I was like, we could help you with that for sure. We would help you refine your messaging. But I'm like, would you rather raise $7 million from a bunch of investors who don't know what you're doing and have to educate and communicate to them what you're doing? Or would you rather just come talk to the people who already get it? And he's like, oh, yeah, that sounds good.
Any questions from folks in the audience? Online? Harold?
Yeah. So a Georgia Tech alum, Jenny Rook, is an investor in your space.
Genoa.
Yeah, Genoa. Can you take us through? Mason pretty much told the answer to my question in his first live meeting with BioTools, but can you take us through how a VC interacts with your network and how the story runs from their perspective?
Yeah. So there's a couple of places. So the first one is, like I said, we get last year we actually got 400 applicants to our pool, but we filter them out and we only said 300 are sort of worth reviewing. The other ones are out of scope or they don't really match the focus. But that's 300 applications. That's a lot. That's a lot of companies. And so we actually recruit our ecosystem. And so we have investors and people like them who volunteer to review a certain number of our applicants. And they read them, they provide feedback. Occasionally they want an intro. They're like, oh, I reviewed this company. It sounds really cool. Can you give me an intro? Things like that happen. But we have each reviewer reviews dozens of applications, and then so each company gets reviewed, preferably 5 to 15 times, and we get all this data, and then we pick those and invite them to our in-person pitch events, Boston, San Diego, and a virtual one. But we're a worldwide program, so people have to travel to do these things. But at the judging events, which I'm a big fan of, there's a huge value generated at our judging events. And it's not like any other judging event you've been to or seen or envisioned. It's not like Shark Tank. So we invite 10 companies in the morning. They go to roundtables, and each roundtable has 3 to 5 experts from our ecosystem. These are investors, these are expert strategics, all these folks. And the company spends about 5 to 10 minutes pitching their company, and about 10 minutes in Q&A discussions, answering questions, and then they get sort of we get written feedback from them. And the companies do that 5 times. So they sit at 5 different tables with 5 sets of individuals. And I tell you, the relationships and the feedback and the connections just from this event are really valuable to companies. And I've had companies that didn't make in. They're like, "Thank you so much for letting us come to this. Like, this was great. We're definitely going to try to come back next year, but this was really valuable." And so the relationships is what it's all about. We help build those, and even at our judging events, you can meet investors who are interested in learning more about your companies. And even in investors like, I'm out, I'm not investing right now, or it's outside of my scope. Oftentimes, if they like you and they kind of, want to help you, they will actually make referrals to other VCs in their network that you may want to talk to that may be more aligned. And then when you get into the program, we give mentors. And so, believe it or not, a lot of our companies, one of their big challenges is fundraising. And so a lot of our companies will get some form of a investor or a VC voice on their mentor panel, which is really great because, if you've never done it, and Mason, I'm sure can attest to this, but when you're going to try to talk to a VC about your company, they're never going to tell you what they really think. They're gonna say, "It sounds good, but we're not investing right now," or "Come back in 6 months," or "Keep me posted." But they're not gonna say, "I really am concerned about this thing over here in the corner, and without that being fixed, I'm never gonna invest." They won't tell you that because it's not how these things work. But in our program, these same people are here to support you. They're not here to invest in you, they're here to support you. And so instead of saying, "I'm not going to invest in you or come back later," they'll work with you to help figure out and identify these trouble spots that are blind spots and are difficult to uncover. Our selection process, one of the reasons I think we're so successful with our 95% company success rate is because our judging events helps us do what they call due diligence, kind of evaluating a company on a bunch of metrics to sort of evaluate the performance of an investment and also checking all your boxes. They call it due diligence, but this due diligence process, investors do it to make an investing decision. They go through, they look at all your paperwork, they look at your market, they call your customers, they look at your product, they talk to your team. They do all these things to make an investment decision. We bring together some of the best people in the world in this space. They meet with you for a short time and we get that feedback, but it's very targeted, crystal clear feedback. And instead of using that feedback to reject you, we figure out how to help you the best.
Right. Hi, Jim. Hi, Mason. I have a question and a follow-up to that. In your field of biotools, it's a bit differentiated from biomedical devices and general medical devices. I mean, I've seen the companies start usually with one device, one product in this area. What's the addressable market that you guys think is a norm for this area? What product, what number would qualify as the cutoff to qualify the product as a startup?
I'll take so I look at it differently. The TAM, I really got away. I try and get away from TAMs in general. And I say there's this many people that we could sell it to for this amount. And like I actually have a list here. And so like it depends what you're trying to do, but if you're trying to get acquired as a tools company, you would want to think at least 10 to $20 million like in revenue, probably, right? So like how many units do I have to sell to get 10 to 20 in recurring revenue? And then you probably have a multiple that's actually worth exiting before you kind of get that trench and up. So I guess your market that you would see on a TAM slide needs to be like between 100 and 500 million minimum to have like a viable exit, I would say. But like, I don't think investors buy that. I think an investor seeing a TAM slide, generally speaking, is going to say, okay, sure, the cell and gene therapy. I say this as a guy that had this on my slide, but like the cell and gene therapy market is $2 billion in 2026, and we're going to get 2% of that. It's like, what does that even mean? So I would flip it and be like, I'm going to sell a heart valve to, this many use cases and it's going to generate this much revenue by 2030. And then you can start to think about funds that would want the return. Jim put it well. A lot of the funds aren't looking for 100x 1000x, so.
Let me rephrase the question maybe that I'm not asking about what goes on the slide, but what you as a founder would go with. I mean, there's an idea, this is the number. What cutoff is, okay, let's go.
So, from my perspective as a founder, not speaking for BioTools Innovator here, I think it's a very difficult question because everybody's different. Everybody's got different interest, risk tolerance, time, energy, equations. I mean, all these things are different for each person. It also depends. Do you need to raise money? Do you need to raise $1 million, $0, or $100 million to build your company and this dream? And that really, I think, is what would drive the number. If you need to raise $1 million, but the total addressable market's $5 to $10 million, that's a really bad equation. You're not going to get money. No investor is going to give you money because you're never going to become a profitable company that will give them their money back. That's the whole point, is they want to help you, but they want to get their money back with growth. If you need to raise $100 million, but you're tackling a $2 billion market of which you can make a big play in, that's reasonable too. But you have to have, it all has to justify itself as well as you. Do you want to build a $2 billion company, or do you want to build a $5 million company? And everybody's, you might quickly say, oh, I want to build the biggest company. But you may not. Once you've raised VC company money, your business changes. Your life before raising venture capital and your life after raising venture capital are never the same again, because now you have expectations and you have responsibilities you didn't have before. And so a lot of people are like, I could build this company to $2 to $3 million, and I could do it with no money. I can start a services lab. We can spin it out of the lab. I can build it up, and I can own 100% of this $2 or $3 million business. And for some folks, that's fine. Go do it. There's nothing stopping you. But if you need to raise money, if you have to build it with capital and you have to sort of build a team and leverage all these other resources, then it just becomes an equation of what's the risk tolerance balance, and does the market justify the money you're raising and the exit you can likely get.
Thank you. And my follow-up is, how does BioTools Innovator get involved with the ventures and the startups in terms of capital and investment?
You want to start that, Mason?
Well, I definitely can't speak to your formal process, but I can tell you that they connect you with, they connect you with VCs, and I have investors on my cap table from the BioTools process. If you're asking if BioTools themselves just writes checks, that's a question for Jim.
The answer is no, but
yeah,
we are actually starting a $300 million, we call it the MedTech Advantage Fund. It's going to hopefully close by the end of the year. But the fund will be for portfolio companies that come through the accelerator, either MedTech or BioTools Innovator. And if they're doing a qualified financing with a lead and there's a price on it and it's more than $2 million of raise, we will invest 10% of the round up to $2 million, I believe is the number. So it's especially right now in a market where funding is tough and getting it done is hard. We don't charge any money to companies. We don't take equity. Ycombinator, how much, Mason, I don't know if you are able to say, but it's not free to do Ycombinator, right?
It's painful. The standard deal is 7% on 125K for the first one. And this is public information, by the way. So, and then the second one is 375 on the most favored nation. So if you crush it, you're not getting out of there for under 5 to 10%, probably equity total. I'm not saying Ycombinator is not worth it.
Getting to them as an investor. Yeah,
exactly.
And so what BioTools Innovator says is, we're not taking any money. We're here to support you. But when you do your next raise, we're not going to set the terms. We're not going to get any preferences. But when your investors invest, we will take up to 10% of that and put money into your company and invest in you. So this is coming. So our next year cohort will probably be the first to take advantage of it. You can't get it till you've exited the program. So Mason can come back and get it, but once you've exited the program, you qualify for it. And I think it's a huge deal. But we don't guarantee funding. We don't introduce you to investors saying they're going to invest. We don't promise anything like that. But we can make the intros and we can help you be prepared for those conversations.
Thanks. You guys touched on something that I want to talk about, and that is there's lots of accelerators out there. And some of them take equity, some don't. Mason, you've been through a couple of different ones. Can you provide any recommendations to folks? What to be careful of? Is it worth it, especially the ones that take equity? Yeah.
Oh man, it's a case by case basis. So BioTools is one of those cases that actually was not something that was like um a big discussion, right? So like when you're talking about any of these other accelerators, you need to think about it. But like everybody, when I was like, "Hey, what do you guys think about BioTools? Should I apply again?" There, it's a win-win-win. It's like you have a chance at winning. At that time, it was 250K. You're going to come out. I did not realize it, but with an awesome summary video, which we probably now need to update. But that video was like awesome for everything. So like that is a no-brainer if you're in the BioTools space, especially because I cannot emphasize enough how much different the BioTools space is than the rest of the ecosystem. As a guy from Ycombinator, Ycombinator was, I don't know. I mean, it was worth it for me because I needed money to start the company. And I really am grateful for Y Combinator, the connections it made for me. But frankly, BioTools, like biotech, is just so hard to do. So like the YC model it works for a lot of biotech companies. It didn't work as well for my company. So I don't know about that. But there's a lot of other, so like the Merck Digital Sciences Studio is like kind of an accelerator and stuff like that. I think that particular one happens to be okay. I don't know what the future of it is, but a lot of these accelerators you guys need to be really careful of, frankly. That's my personal opinion, is that there's a lot of accelerators that they're kind of, I don't want to be like disparaging, and none of the ones on my cap table are bad, but I'm just saying some of the deals I've seen are a little sketchy. So I recommend asking somebody, honestly, before you sign up for them. Like, what was a new chip or something like that?
New chip, yeah, I was going to come back to new chip. New chip was a pretty aggressive one. They charged 25, 50K and introduced you to investors. And they went belly up, and all of their assets went for bankruptcy. Ended up a lot of companies they had warrants for a lot of companies. Those got auctioned off in bankruptcy court, and so a lot of companies failed and had their valuations cratered because these warrants were executed for pennies on the dollar, and it really messed up a bunch of companies. So you can do it. That's hopefully the worst it ever gets. But if you haven't heard about it, go read about it. It was a bad deal.
What was the
Can
name
I
of
take
that?
a break?
Sorry. Yeah.
Blue
Blue
chip.
chip. Blue chip.
I think it was blue chip. No, maybe it was new chip.
Is new chip accelerator. Yeah. And this is like a famous, we're not like just being like,
Yeah.
it blew up in
Oh yeah,
a lot
they
of people's
approached me
faces.
multiple times with my company, and I never got the guts to pull the trigger because it was a lot of
Same.
money. So like, yeah.
Nope, not doing it.
So I would love, can we take a break here? And I would love to show Anson's video from our program. Can we do that?
Sure.
Right.
Modern biotherapeutics are revolutionizing the way we approach human healthcare in the 21st century. Some of the most promising biopharmaceuticals remain inaccessible to patients due to bottlenecks associated with drug discovery, development, and manufacturing. At Andson Biotech, we empower mass spectrometry, the gold standard in molecular analysis. Our drop-in platforms, the DynaCHIP and the DynaMark, streamline biopharmaceutical workflows from lab to market.
The DynaCHIP is a microfluidic system that allows for simple introduction of samples directly from culture. The samples are then processed by removing interfering molecules, while also introducing reagents that will boost the signal of critical quality attributes that we seek to analyze.
The future is in biologic therapies and specifically in cellular therapies. How do you make these medicines economical? That's the real beauty of what Andson is developing.
Measure what matters with Andson Biotech and help us unlock the promise of next-gen biotherapeutics.
So, Mason, how much did our team help you?
For everything. I mean, I was gonna say that actually, I mean, the whole process was incredible. But we got lucky. We just talked to the team about what we needed to do, and I mean, I think we did that together in a day, guys. It was just one day of shooting.
Wow.
And then, I mean, it looked really professional. We had like some video edited, but like, it's amazing. First, I'm an engineer. So like, anytime I see something artistic, I'm like, how did you do that? But that unlocked, I think, not only like it challenges you, put your entire message in 1 minute, which I think is a great challenge to all of you, and then like have it in a way that you can forward it to people. It really helps people that have no idea what we do understand at a high level. Like it passes the mom test, so to speak. You could give that to your mom and they'd be like, oh, I understand vaguely what's going on. So, but and I'm glad we talked about it, Jim, because that was, I know they talk about it, but it cannot be, it's just so valuable to have a video like that. It helps you summarize your company. It helps you summarize your messaging, and then you have to put it all into 1 minute, which then you can forward to investors as an intro, and it's awesome. So
when you've had your
sorry, Jim, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I can attest to the journey that these guys have been on. I mean, I've seen this technology from the beginning, and the story they used to try to tell about this technology and what its value proposition was. And I cannot tell you the transformation that these guys have made in the last, I don't know how many years it's been, 4 years, 5 years. Amazing. Just from the lab, from the bench to where they are now. So really incredible. And it just goes to show you that you can all do this too. It's really tough to start with. And so really kudos, Mason, to you and your team. It's really great.
Well, I appreciate that, Cindy. But you can't do it alone. I will emphasize that. You need people like Jim and Cindy along the way.
Jim, I got a question. I may have missed it in your comments, but what is the business model pre-$300 million fund of BioTools? How does that work?
We're a nonprofit, so we get sponsored and supported by venture capital and sponsor partners in our industry.
Wow. Okay. Impressive. So was that a strategic decision with the fund sitting out there in the future if you scaled successfully?
The fund is independent of BioTools Innovator, if that's what you're asking.
Okay.
It's a separate entity. So I was going to say though, when you're raising money and you've talked to your 100th VC and they say, hey, forward me your deck, and you forward them your deck and you never hear anything again, which happens a lot. To me, I made a video too, and no startup has the time or resources to put into making a stupid video like this, left to their own devices, because you got so much more important things to do. But we force you to do it in the program. And it was one of the most valuable things I did in the program too. When I walked away, they'd say, send me your deck. And I'm like, you know what? Actually, why don't you just watch this little video? It's 1 minute of your time. And then if you still want to talk to me, let me know. And it was night and day. I had, instead of like 10% of people calling you back, I was getting like 50, 60% of people calling me back. It was such a better way to go, because storytelling is how people actually like connect and process and make sense of things. So being able to tell a story for your introduction and share that in a simple way, it's so valuable.
So I think you have a lot of people really interested in this accelerator. Jim, can you talk a little bit? You have a pretty low acceptance rate. Can you talk a little bit about, what are the ideal characteristics? And first of all, does the startup have to be incorporated? And then secondly, what is the ideal company or startup that would make it into your program?
Yeah. So you don't need to be incorporated to apply. You can go through our application process, but you can't start the program until you're incorporated in some form or shape. Again, we're worldwide, so there's different mechanisms in certain countries, but you need to be a company, and so that is one requirement. But to apply, you don't have to be. In terms of like who's a good fit, when I hear people talk internally, I think honestly, like the most important criteria, and it's qualified because it's not the most important, but a very important criteria is coachability. From our perspective, we can provide experts, we can provide guidance, we can give you input. But if you're not the type of person to absorb that and acknowledge it and make sense of it, then we can't help you. There's nothing else we can really do. And so if you're not coachable, if you're not there to learn and absorb and all those things, we can't help you. Now, you've got to be careful. You can be too coachable. You part of the challenge of being a founder and a CEO is you have a lot of different inputs coming at you, and you've got to filter those, listen to them, and then make a decision. And all that's okay, but some people, they don't listen. And so if you're giving them advice or not listening, that's not going to be a good fit for our program. So that would probably be like one of the number one criteria we're looking for is like people who want to learn and learn from others. And if you get good at that, it's a great skill. I think secondly, differentiated technology, it's very difficult to compete with a big player in a saturated market with undifferentiated technologies. And somebody might come along and be like, oh, I can make that for 3 cents cheaper, or I can make it for a little bit better. Oftentimes, that's not enough. It needs to be significantly better, significantly different to have a chance of building and breaking into the market. So we're looking for technologies that have an impact and a change and maybe a new way of doing things that have a chance of being successful. It's not our criteria, but ultimately we are looking for companies that are looking to raise and scale capital and money. If you're going to build a service that's going to be just you from now to eternity, again, fine, go do it. That's great. But you're not probably going to make a big impact, and you're not going to be getting a product to market if that's what you're doing. So we're looking for people looking to make an impact and a change. Um, and then I think this is not really a criteria for selection, but the biggest critique, and it's not a negative critique, but the biggest critique of companies coming into the program from our mentors and judges is that the companies really have great technology. They think they don't really know, but they think, and it sounds really good. The people are smart, the team's motivated, but they have no idea about the customer and the market they're working to sell into, and that's a common critique, and it's usually followed up by, and I really hope they get into the program because I really think we could help them with that. And so, you don't have to know everything, but be humble, be open, have a differentiated technology, do something important, and then, be scrappy, figure out the rest. That would be my advice. Mason, do you have any perspectives on that?
I mean, I think life pro tip, if you're like ever at a loss for like the hard question of like, why do you think you should do BioTools Innovator? Why do you think you should do this accelerator? You should be like, well, I was actually coming here to ask you that question because I think we're, coming like so far along. And that's honestly in the pitch event, they asked me that question a lot. And I said the same thing as everybody, like, look, I'm trying to fundraise, I'm trying to hire, I'm trying to figure out if I have the right positioning here. Um, but I wanted to honestly present where the company's at, the technology's at, and see if you guys think you could help us achieve our goals. And like, if you can, then that'd be awesome. Maybe we should work together. If not, then I don't want to waste your time either. And apparently it worked. Like that, I said those exact things to those people, and they let me in. And then I was paired with a VC and all that. So it seems like they heard what I was saying. Anyways, so I think be honest, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say, no accelerator is going to save your company. So you're the same company like before and after the accelerator, not for better or worse. The best thing an accelerator can do is find something inside of you and like reveal it. But like you're the same, right? So it's not like getting into BioTools, whether you get in or not, it doesn't really matter, right? So the low acceptance rate, all that stuff, it doesn't like you got to just keep on going. And I think Jim said that, like just keep trying, eventually something's going to work.
When I had my company, I kept track of all the things I applied to, and I can't remember the exact number, but I tracked it. I said I applied to 150 things. I got into, I can't remember, 15-20% of them. And you hear this, it's like, oh, so-and-so did X, Y, Z. Well, everybody talks about what they won. They don't talk about all the things they didn't get into and apply for. So apply, try it, give it a shot. If you don't make it the first year, we know you, reapply. People remember you, that gets recognized. So, it's really grit and determination. If you don't have grit and determination, if you're going to give up because of some simple roadblocks, you're not going to be successful. So, I guess that's another add-on to the what are we looking for? Really people with grit and determination, people who are committed, passionate, and really want to see what they're doing through.
A few more minutes. Do we have any questions from the audience? We have one question here.
I just have a quick question. I was wondering, under the drug discovery tools, if software companies are included, if you guys consider like AI for drug discovery.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. No, No issue there. In fact, if you go to our webpage, I was going to show. So our webpage, if you go to biotoolsinnovator.org, on our webpage, we have a list of our companies, and you can review them. There's a number, and they have categorizations on them. So we have a bunch of, I would say, software and drug discovery type companies, analytics companies as well. I would also say we will be opening applications for this next cycle mid-November. If you go to our webpage, biotoolsinnovator.org, we have a sign up to notify me when they're available. And so if you're interested, sign up now. And then when the application's open, we'll send you an email invite to apply when they open up in November. And if you're on LinkedIn, follow us on LinkedIn. Get updates there too.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Mason. Thank you for the talk. I have a question on how best to describe your message when explaining your platform technologies, like with BioTools and everything. There's typically many different applications to various disease areas and markets. But that's such a broad scope to try to narrow down. And I find that typically investors want to see where you're going. So do you have any advice for if you have a very, I guess, diverse use cases for your product? How do you sort of narrow down and explain what direction you're going into, or to decide which direction you're going into without spreading your startup money thin and your resources thinly when you're starting the company? Thank you.
I mean, yeah, I would say you definitely do not. Okay, I don't know. Jim, you could disagree with me. I don't recommend pitching a platform straight up. I don't recommend going in and being like, we can solve any problem. We can design any drug. We can do anything. I have a platform technology that can do anything. But I went into investors and was like, we're doing this niche application. There's 1,000 people. Here's a list of them. I'm going to sell it to them. They want it. Like, it was like very small. And then everybody, and this is the second lesson, like the right idea in the right room flies. So when they're surrounded by BioTools investors, they understand like, oh, this is their first application, but they can expand. So that would be my recommendation. But you're going to have a really hard time. SBIR is everything. Talking about we have a platform that can do anything. Organ on a chip is a classic example of this. Like, it can be expanded to like any cancer model ever, but everybody's going to say, okay, but where's your traction with the first one? You know what I mean? So I think my recommendation is hyper focus on something that's going to get you traction quickly with the most amount of people. I know that's not an easy thing to find out, but if you have a platform, if I could go back and tell myself, I'd say just pick a dang direction. And you might be wrong, but you got to like show that you have a direction you're going into and you can expand later.
I don't have anything to add. Mason hit the nail on the head. Investors will not put money into a product without a customer and an application. If you can be anything to everybody, you're nothing to nobody. So,
well, thank you so much, Jim and Mason. That was excellent. Really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely, Cindy. I'm in Atlanta, of course, everyone. And I feel like most of you probably know me. So like I'm always around if you guys want to talk startups. So even about this one. So
thanks. Thanks, guys. Yep.
All right, thanks.